Okay. Well, so many audience, thanks a lot. Okay, let's start with Suzuki-san.
Thank you for your introduction. I'm Suzuki Mahoro from Iwate Prefectural Museum. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to speak to you today. The title of my presentation is Lessons Learned from the Great East Japan Earthquake, What is Needed to Rescue Natural History Collections. I like to talk about our experience rescuing the Museum's natural history collections after the Great East Japan Earthquake in 2011. This is a map of Japan. We are now here, Okinawa. This figure showing the tsunami heights observed at the 11 March 2011 Tohoku earthquake. This is the Sanrik coast of Tohoku, where the highest tsunami hit. Let me enlarge this part of the map. This map shows museums located along the Sanrik coast at that time. All of them were devastated by the tsunami. The Iwate Prefecture Museum, where I work, is located inland in Morioka City, 100 kilometers away from the coast. This table shows the damage to natural history specimens held by museums in Iwate Prefecture that were hit by the tsunami. For example, in Yamada Town, Whale and Marine Science Museums had a warehouse stored many marine algae specimens. An entire warehouse was swept away by the tsunami, and a large number of specimens were lost. On the other hand, in Rikuzen-Takata City, various natural history specimens were rescued from a concrete building that had been hit by the tsunami. This is the Rikuzen-Takata City Museum before the tsunami. It opened 1959 and had a diverse collection of over 150,000 items, which included historical and natural history materials and works of art. The 2011 tsunami engulfed the entire urban area of Rikuzen-Takata, leaving 8% of the city's population dead or missing. Many museum staffs also lost their lives. This photo was taken by my colleague 12 days after the tsunami, showing the museum building. This photo was taken 1 month later. Various objects swept in by the tsunami were blocking the entrance of the building. Rescue efforts for museum collections in Rikuzen-Takata began 3 weeks after the tsunami. Surviving museum staff requested assistance through museums in neighboring areas. Networks of museums and experts, primarily in Iwate Prefecture, responded and joined the operation. It is a major regret for us that it took us 3 weeks to begin the operation. At this point of time, the museum associations in Japan did not have any rules of disaster response. We were not prepared at all. This is a shot of us removing various objects carried by the tsunami into the building and searching for museum materials in the building. Next, we transported museum materials to safe locations. These operations took about 1 month. These are the plant specimens that were brought to the Iwate Prefecture Museum in that Morioka city. In all, about 40,000 biological specimens were rescued. All of them were dirty and covered with muddy water. They had also begun to grow mold. However, at this time, we did not have any large freezer. Therefore, an urgent project was started to clean and restore them. The Iwate Prefecture Museum staff, including myself, created a protocol for cleaning and restoration of specimens. Then, we sent out emails to museum professionals throughout Japan, asking for their cooperation in the project. Many museums immediately responded to our call, so we sent the damaged specimens to them via delivery service. This map shows the locations of museums that participate in the specimen restoration project. This is Iwate Prefecture, yellow part. And the black circles are the locations of the museums that restored plant specimens of Rikuzen Takata. And the white squares are the locations of the museums that restored insect specimens. And today, all of the natural history specimens have been restored and returned to the new repository of the Rikuzen Takata City Museum. You can see this belt. This belt is one of safety measures against earthquake. From these experiences, we have learned many things. The most significant reflection was this: if we had been prepared, we would have been able to begin assisting the damaged museums much sooner. Based on this, museum associations in Japan have made some changes to respond more quickly to disasters. For example, the Iwate Prefecture Museum Association has established new rules governing actions to be taken after a disaster. Moreover, several new networks of museum staff and researchers by specialty were created, and mailing lists were developed as a means of keeping in touch quickly. These changes enabled us to move more quickly to assist in protecting collections in subsequent disasters. I think that there are two challenges in the future. One is to inform specimen holders about how to protect their collections from disasters and how to save them after a disaster. Another is to secure funding for specimen protection activities. These are not easy challenges, of course, but I believe we are making progress. I'd like to close my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzuki-san. Any questions? I want to ask you, make a question in slowly. We are not native. Any comments or questions? No question from Zoom? Yes, please. On the mic, please. No, you can't. Okay.
What level of pre-disaster sort of level are you at the museum at
What level? 標高っていうことですかね。I think the Riksen-Takata City Museum is at 10 meters.
Yes, the city of the Riksen-Takata is located in the very front of the seashore. So and the Riksen-Takata city itself has suffered several times of the tsunami in the last 100 years. So the museum itself has a risk of tsunami. So that they made in the high building, but tsunami occurs much higher. Is that the answer to you?
How close to pre-disaster conditions is the museum now?
今の復活した場所が笠上地区だっていうのは。
そうですね。The new building is on the
on the reclaimed land and about altitude about more than 10 meters, 20 meters?
I think so.
I think so. So the city completely remade as a safe land. And the storage room is divided from the museums and the mountainside, so that the situation of the specimens is much safer than before. Any others? Okay, it's time.
Thank you, everyone.
So, thanks, Zhang. Okay, let's move on to the next. So Dr. Pascal Querner. Yes. Okay, please go ahead.
Hello, good morning from my side. I'm an IPM person, and I want to present you a research project and the first results from the Natural History Museum in Vienna. And I will speak about temperature fluctuations and about pests, that is insects and fungi. And here you see in our taxidermy lab, we breed pests, which is always a good challenge for the IPM person like me. Here we see some climate scenario for the future, and we see that average temperatures are rising. The purple line is for worldwide, and the red line is for Austria. So we are expecting increasing temperatures, and we are also expecting heat waves in the summer and extreme weather events. And already in the last years, we are feeling that quite a lot in Austria. So I'm the leader of a research project looking at this topic, and we are investigating 20 different buildings in Austria. Some are with climate control, some are only heated, like the Natural History Museum of Vienna that I will focus. We have some high-tech storage depositories where maybe 90% of the art is stored in Austria, so under very good conditions. And we have some historic libraries which don't have any climate control, and temperature goes down to maybe 5 degrees in the wintertime. And we are looking at the building of the museum. So we have the outdoor climate that is changing. We want to see how that is affecting the indoor climate. And then the next relationship is how the indoor climate is affecting the insects and the fungi species that are present. And there's a PhD student doing the fungi part, and I'm responsible for the insect pest monitoring. And we also have the aspect of new species that are introduced in the last years to Austria. So I will describe a few of them. And here you just see one example for the biscuit beetle, for example, an important museum pest. There's quite good data available about development times under different temperatures, and you see from 230 days at 70 degrees, the development becomes much shorter to 70 days at 26 to 27 degrees, and we have these temperatures in our museums in Austria if there is no air conditioning. So We've published already a few papers, so if you're really interested in the subject, then just let me know. Most of them are open access. And at the moment, we have some lab experiments running, looking at the most important pests at different temperatures. We want to see get some good lab data for our big analysis at the end of the project at different temperatures. Development time is looked at, reproduction rate and food consumption. And the PhD student, she sampled the 20 sites with 3 different types of methods. And she also has already some results and the first publication out. But I will now focus on the Natural History Museum. You see here the building. And we installed 250 data loggers. That's a lot of data, and we're struggling at the moment to analyze the data a little bit. But the first results already show that it has an extreme climate inside of the building. It is very dry in the winter months because the museum heats for the visitors. Then they need fresh air because there are so many visitors, so they open the windows. They continue heating, and the humidity goes down, 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 up to about 20% relative RH, so that's very dry. And in the summer months, we have a similar problem that they open the windows in the exhibition areas because there are so many visitors. There is no ventilation or HVAC system running, and we have over 30 degrees in the exhibition spaces. So this is a potential risk for the objects. Here's just an overview of the different basements of the building, but I don't want to get too much into detail. Most of it is only heated in the winter time. We have very few rooms which have cooling for storage of archive material, for example. And from the Fraunhofer Institute, a partner in the project, we got a climate simulation for the future. And everything was taken into account, exposure to sunlight, surface area of the windows, material of the building, the collection, number of visitors in the exhibition spaces. And with all this data, they make a near future and far future assumption of how the indoor climate will change. So you see some results here. There's not a strong increase, but maybe just 1 or 2 degrees higher temperature will already affect the pests which are present inside the collection. And the same is the case here for the relative, before was the relative humidity, and here for the temperature. We have different climate models, and we see for almost all of them an increase in the temperature. And a very important part of the project is comparing this building with the Kunsthistorische Museum, which is just opposite. It's the same age, same building type, same size of rooms, but it's, the exhibition spaces have air conditioning. And so one part of the project will be to compare these 2 buildings. And here are some results from the pest monitoring. I want to show you, we have a lot of pests. You see here, this is across the different floors of the building, and this is the number of pests that I've found, so 19 different type of species. I've been working in this museum already for a long time doing the monitoring. The interesting thing is we don't have any damage to the collection. The insects are there, they're feeding on the dust, they're feeding on other things, but not on historical objects, not on the interesting or valuable parts of the collection. So this is a picture from another university collection, and this damage was done by this beetle called Resa vespole. I don't know if you have it in your country or if you heard of it. This is a species which is currently spreading in Austria. So I found it in 2 locations in 2018. And last year I have it in 14 locations in the monitoring. So the data is quite good because all those buildings are monitored every year. So we see this species is spreading, and this is a parthenogenetic species. So we only need 1 female to enter a collection or a room, and it can lay eggs and start a new infestation. In the Natural History Museum, we have 3 different types of Attogenous species, and one is quite a challenge for the identification. You see the antenna is a little bit differently shaped, so not so easy to identify them on the side with the hand lens, so you really need some time. And I'm just analyzing now the diversity of pests across Austria, so this is my current project. And we know this Attogenous beetles, they like to live off the dust that you see underneath the historic floor. And we sometimes, when a room is renovated, I have the chance to take some pictures, take some dust samples, and we see here the larvae and the signs of the larvae living underground, underneath the wooden floor. And dust is a big problem in the museum because we have thousands of visitors every day. So I got the idea of analyzing the dust to see if we have some pests inside. And we got a small project funded, and I compared the dust samples in all the floors of the museum, and we detected a lot of pests, but we also detected a lot of other species. So the diversity of the Natural History Museum is 349 species across all the rooms. So that's quite an interesting result, and you see just here what different types. Most of them are not pests, but of course some of them are relevant for the collection. And another 2 species that are very important as pests is the gray silverfish that you can see. Sometimes they even feed on my traps. And then we have another species, the ghost silverfish, and colleagues here in Japan have found it too. And now we are collaborating, and it is spreading across Europe at the moment. And also here we believe it has a parthenogenetic development, and that's why is the reason why it can spread so fast. So what do we do today for the IPM? This is the nitrogen chamber of the museum. It's in the basement, so that's very important. Of course, many collections use a freezer, like in all others natural history collections. And we have a cooled storage at 10 degrees centigrade. But the problem is, with the heat waves that we have in the summer, we cannot keep this low temperature. The temperature goes up to 15 degrees that we see here in the figures. And at that moment, I already have the first pests inside of this cold storage. So this is a problem for the future. This cold storage was built 25 years ago, and it's not designed for these heat waves that we have in the summer months. And I just got this result recently. So what are we doing for the future climate and for the insect adaptation? The museum is installing outside shading for the windows. That would help to reduce the temperature. It is installing district cooling now, which was just finished 2024. And of course, I always want to push the museum to install insect netting if they are opening the windows for ventilation to prevent insects from coming in. And this table I just got with an email yesterday, it shows the carbon footprint of the museum. So there was a big research study on that, comparing 2019 with 2023. And we see large numbers of visitors. We see the paper material going into the museum. It's like 45 or 58 tons. So that's quite a lot of material going into the museum. And then you have the garbage that goes out of the museum. So you can have a calculation of that. And we managed to reduce the total carbon by almost 40% in the museum. So that's a result of changing electricity, using the district cooling, and making some other small adaptations. So thank you for your attention.
Well, thanks a lot. Wow, impressed, and I have a fear for the... Any question and comments? Yes, please.
Thank you for your talk. You've made me feel itchy.
Good, good.
I have a question. You said the insects, the pests, haven't damaged your historic specimens. Can you explain why? Is that because of residual pesticides on them or something else?
This is probably the case for a lot of them, that there are some pesticides like arsenic compounds still present in many parts of the historic collections. The museum still used Ôhara, for example, until recently. I don't know if you know this product. It's also a pesticide. I can show, maybe I can just show a few more slides. The museum is still using pesticides until recently. So that is maybe one of the reasons. I just, oh, that's the end. I just prepared a few slides at the end of the talk to see. So the entomology collecting, they use these Nexalote stripes, which seem to have helped and worked. And they used paradiclorbenzol until 2017. I always try to show them their alternatives, but they are very resistant to changing. But this was the last application, for example, for that. And here they applied this Ôhara on this not historic object in the exhibition. So it's a museum that needs to change these methods. But I think there's the risk of it can always change any moment, because historic pesticides, I don't trust them for the future. And that's why I do the IPM there. But I find it surprising that there's not more damage to the collection, because other museums also have historic objects, then they have infestation. So maybe we use more pesticides, I don't know. But there is no recording of anything. And it's like, I'm trying to document this, for example, it's the only documentation that they have of this application, which was done for 15 years on a yearly basis. So I'm trying to convince the museum to stop using pesticides, but also documenting the old methods that were used, but we don't know how long this will protect the collection. And we have new pests, we have other climate, we have a lot of issues, so I think that's it's not going to be easy to keep this level.
Any others? Yes, please.
With your IPM methods, how frequently are you vacuuming? And I know that you're just one person. Who do you collaborate with interdepartmentally to do IPM routine maintenance in the galleries and collections? And how frequently are you checking pest monitors?
Okay. I'm responsible for the pest monitors. There are about, I think, 700 across the building, and I'm checking them every 2 months. And there's a cleaning company working for the museum doing the cleaning, which is not very good. I had just a workshop with the cleaning ladies from the company, and we tried to think about cleaning robots and so on, but the museum is, there is budget limitations, and I see that in every building, if you have a lot of visitors, you have a lot of dust, and that's a big problem for the IPM, because the insects feed on the dust, and that's why we have so many species and so many abundant pests like clothes moths and so on. I'm not responsible for the cleaning. I'm just trying to help them. And I just did this project with the vacuum cleaning and the DNA analysis. It's another argument to show the museum you have to take care of your collection.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's time. And so we have to move on to the next slide. Okay, next is Tobias and the friends.
Hi, so as the title says, we're here to talk about our experience from our sealing
caved in. We come from Sweden, and unlike, for example, Japan, we have almost no natural disasters and no experience with this. So this was really interesting. This is the Swedish Museum of Natural History, located in Stockholm. And it was built in 1916, and it's Sweden's largest museum. And we have around 250 employees with around 11 million specimens in our collection, so it's quite large. It all started on August 16. Most of our colleagues had come back from summer vacation, but some was still away. And then 3 square meters of plaster, weighing almost 200 to 300 kilos, fell in the main mineralogical collection. And fortunately, no one was hurt, but there were people. Fortunately, yeah. No one was hurt. We've had previous problems with plasters in the past. So this is a picture from 1999, and this is in the same room as the plaster disaster from 2023. So we had several ongoing projects with like netting and replastering during this time, but now we needed to do like more risk assessments and check the plaster. So they did this by dragging a hammer over the plaster, and if it sounds hollow, you know that it's not properly attached to the ceiling. And they did this in the whole main building, and discovered that it's no good. The safety could no longer be guaranteed. So there was an emergency meeting, all the staff got on Zoom and were told that all the red areas on the maps, no go, you need to evacuate, and they had 1 hour to do so. And that meant they had 1 hour to collect everything they may need for like unforeseeable future, and that meant like computers, but also collection materials and stuff like that. And we also closed some parts of the museum, public parts of the museum as well. And then they continued with the risk assessments. This is all the red parts are where the plaster is hollow or loose from the ceiling. And by 29th of August, they decided to close the whole museum for the public, and a lot of rooms for the staff as well. And this got big in the news. I mean, we're the Sweden's largest museum, and the ceiling is falling. That's no good. And it's also started a discussion of how Swedish state-owned museums are finding it increasingly difficult to cope with rising rents and soaring operational costs. I don't think we are alone in that. I think other countries struggle with this as well. And from September onward, they started to renovate. And in a lot of areas, they put up netting to, like, if the plaster is falling, the netting is catching the plaster. Because replastering the whole museum, that will take years. And so a lot of back and forth. The museum could finally open to the public on 4th of June. And here's a video of when the public finally could visit us. And I'll leave it to Tobias.
Thank you, Andrea. So now we have heard the storyline, what happened, what's going on to renovate it, and that's going to go on for a while. So, but this was almost a year of more or less fully closed museums with closed collections, with closed offices and all that. So we had to adjust quite a lot to this. And the first thing we noticed pretty quickly is how hard it was to get around. Just from going to the bathroom, going to the restaurant, to meetings. And this is just a coffee break. Going to the coffee break, you have to go around half the museum, more or less. So that took a lot of toll on us and time out of our work, where we needed to do a lot of things with stuff that we couldn't reach. So the thing was, everything was affected. There was elevators, there was stairwells, hallways, offices. No one was safe. And they could change it from day to day. So it was always a changing environment and how to move around. And to move around with specimens or move staff around needed some kind of creative solutions every so often. And everywhere you go, keep your hard hat on. But what about the collections then? Collections and collection work. How was that affected? Yeah, some collections were totally unaffected and we could continue on a normal day-to-day basis. Others were completely closed and totally restricted. And that meant that we could not keep it up for loans, we could not keep it up for collection work or for guest visitors and stuff like this. And we already had a long list of backlog and waiting guests and visitors since the pandemic that we just almost started to get back to zero on that, and then this happened. So now we're back again on a quite big waiting list and then a big backlog on that. And even though we are not in the collections, we cannot be there to work, but other things are still at work. So we have to now go through everything and see if there are infestations of pests again. We don't use pesticides, we used IPM measurements and try to keep a track on that. So we have so far localized a few areas where we might need to put in extra efforts to deal with that. But it seems also that since we haven't been moving there, they haven't been moving that much either. It's like cabinets have been closed and everything. So it seems to be
So I
quite
forgot to tell you about
effective to
this
just leave it
other
alone.
Drama. Very exciting. The
And
soft log
not
arrived
only
today.
beetles or other type of pests that can destroy our specimens, it's also ongoing renovation work on the roof. You drop a hammer on a case of glass and the glass falls on the skeletons and they break. But luckily most of the stuff was protected and they were kind of careful with doing this. But in situations like this, when it's quite messy, things happen. So good planning and good covering of things is a good practice. So other things what happened was that we couldn't reach the collections we normally work in, but that means that we can focus on other things and we could put a lot more focus on digitizing the collections that were available, for example, and help our colleagues with that. But focus is not always the only thing you need, and sometimes you need to play safe and take the small victories with the big ones. So for example, we have this Nordsym's Vega Center, which is doing microanalysis and microimaging of geoscientific samples. They have pretty expensive equipment and too big to move and so on. So we need to figure out what to do with this. So we play it safe. We cover it in dust protective layers and physical damage protective layers, and we keep it like this until they have done with the renovations. Because if something goes wrong, a hammer fall on the case, that's expensive, and we don't want that. And it's also expensive for this stuff to stand in a box, but it's much better than the alternative.
Yes. So I think we have to speed up a bit. We skipped this one. We had an unexpected research opportunity analyzing the plaster that we didn't know anything about. We can talk about that later. But also the public division had to adjust to this, and we had a collaboration with a shopping mall where we set up a pop-up museum, and we also set up explainer desks in libraries, and we reached new visitor groups, and that's good. And some guided tours online, which were developed during the pandemic, and also some departments weren't directly affected, so we could do some behind-the-scenes shows as well, showing collections and research. There was a staff exchange program developed, so staff worked in another museum with the museum hosts, and yeah, there you go. There were some positives. I think we should point out the media exposure. Any publicity is good publicity. And it highlighted the problems with this prevailing cost rent system, which causes a lot of problems for cultural institutions in Sweden. It also shows the need of clear communications in all directions and highlighted the need for clear-cut crisis management plans. And we got a lot of support from colleagues and institutions around the world. So there was a letter of support written aimed for the Prime Minister of Sweden, and it stressed the importance of collections and research. We're very grateful for that. And we also got a lot of support from our visitors who missed us. Now we're back in business. Collections are open and available for research and curation, and equipment up and running. So that's good. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks. And any question or comments? Yes, please.
I was wondering, do you have specimens on loan from other institutions, and how did you ensure their safety during this time?
Maybe you do the collection.
Yeah, that's a good question. Next. No, we treat them. Our specimens were not in a risk per se from the roof or ceiling falling down. So we could still treat them the same as we did the rest. It was just that some stuff, mainly our main collections, were closed off.
Yes.
You mentioned that there had been a previous smaller collapse about 25 years ago. Was there not any sort of routine checking of the plaster since then to the point where it got to everything has to be evacuated?
Sorry. No, there was an ongoing checkup. There was an ongoing plan to do these places. They were just going to come to the room that fell. But it was on a much slower time scale and not really adjusted to what was needed. And it was a really wet and humid summer. We had a lot of public coming in, bringing in the moisture, and I think that sped up things a lot.
Right. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, so the next one is Ebihara-san.
Okay. Yeah. I'm Atsushi Ebihara from National Museum of Nature and Science in Tsukuba. So today I talk about the most recent large-scale rescue activities of plant specimens damaged by a natural disaster in Japan. So the disaster occurred in early July in 2020, and in Kumamoto Prefecture, the southern part of Kyushu. So flooding occurred in Kumagawa River due to heavy rains. So the buildings of Hitoyoshi Castle History Museum were submerged in flood water. So this river is that time full of water. So 30,000 plant specimens stored in the building closest to the river here were also submerged in the water. And the water level in the building reached to 2 meters high, and the number of damaged specimens was increased by falling from shelves floating in the water, like here. So, as the museum is not a natural history museum, so the collection itself was little known to botany researchers. Index Herbariorum, the international plant specimen database, listed 71 active herbaria in Japan. But our survey showed that there are 185 herbaria not in the index. So, however, undoubtedly more overlooked ones. So those overlooked collections have high risks of delays in rescuing specimens in the case of natural disaster. So one of such collections was the Kanjiro Mayebara collection in Hitoyoshi Castle History Museum, which was damaged by the flood in 2020. So while working as a high school and elementary school teacher, so Kanjiro Mayebara contributed to the elucidation of the flora of southern part of Kumamoto Prefecture, and his Flora Austrohigoensis, published in 1931, is recognized as one of the pioneers of the Japanese local flora. So he often sent duplicate specimens to Tokyo or Kyoto, and professional taxonomists studied his specimens. And then taxonomists published new species based on Mayebara's specimens. So a large number of Mayebara's specimens, including types, are housed in the herbaria at Kyoto or Tokyo. And after his death in 1975, the specimens left at his home were later purchased by Hitoyoshi City in 1994 and were stored in the Hitoyoshi Castle Museum of National History. So the total number of the collection in Hitoyoshi was 32,626 sheets, according to the compiled list. And its large part was damaged in this time. And as an evidence of Mayebara's significant contribution to the floristic studies, so scientific names of at least 13 vascular plant taxa are dedicated to him. In addition, many new taxa were described based on his collection. And the holotypes and the syntypes of the relevant taxa are now housed in herbaria in Tokyo and Kyoto safely, but the damaged collection probably contained their duplicate specimens. So in fact, several specimens that appear to be duplicate of types have been found in the course of the rescue activities. So once information about the disaster was shared by a mailing list established by Suzuki-san, the first speaker, many of botany curators offered to participate in specimen rescue activities. However, that period was a quite problematic situation due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the volunteers could not visit the disaster area from distant places. So only the staffs of the Kumamoto Prefecture Museum Network Center, the most closely located natural history institution to Hitoyoshi, went to the Hitoyoshi Museum. And all damaged specimens were once transported to the network center, distant from Hitoyoshi about 60 kilometers. On the other hand, National Museum of Nature Science and the West Japan Natural History Museum, Natural History Museum Network provided support from remote locations. So they accumulated information on institutions that could keep damaged specimens, and they provided the list to the network center. They also provided other cardboard boxes and other materials for transportation. Then specimens were shipped from the Kumamoto Museum Network Center to 30 institutions across Japan by low temperature parcel service. Finally, it took about a month to place all 30,000 damaged specimens. It's corresponding to 500 boxes, so into a stable, low temperature facilities. And because of the very hot and humid season, some of the specimens were seriously damaged and decayed. this is an example of specimen stabilization in the National Museum of Nature and Science. So in this case, the method of process were not standardized because of the huge amount of damaged specimens. And only minimum agreement was made, such as newspaper and labels with original information or handwriting should not be discarded. And how is the current situation of the damaged specimens? So approximately 80% of the total has already dried and returned to Hitoyoshi City. However, it is temporarily stored, not in the Hitoyoshi Castle History Museum, but in a building on a higher place where the risk of flooding is low. And the biggest issue is this collection at present is an uncertain vision of the future utilization in Hitoyoshi. And Hitoyoshi Castle History Museum doesn't have any specialist of natural history and has no ideas on how to utilize plant specimens in the future. So also there is no permanent storage space of this collection without flooding risk in the museum. And another issue is the collection contains unusually large number of duplicate specimens, that is nearly 80%. So although the drying of the damaged specimen has been almost finished, they have not been completely cleaned or restored. Some of them are in extremely poor condition like this. And they have lost much of their value as research materials. And the emergent rescue of this collection is almost complete now, but an enormous amount of future work is needed to revive it as a research material. And this specimen rescue activity is almost entirely supported by volunteers' efforts. So we thank to all the participants of the rescue activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you for Ebihara-san. And any questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you for your talk. I was wondering if you could give us an idea on what you think would be the best outcome for the future of the collection.
Oh,
please.
my idea? Yeah, maybe we should discuss the curators of the history museum very carefully in the future. So I have, my idea is not clear now, but probably it is very important material to the local heritage. So maybe at least that part of them should be stored in the museum, but the amount is too much, I think. So maybe we should discuss about this point very carefully with the curator of local Hitoyoshi Museum. It's my idea.
Yes, I am a co-author of this presentation, and I agree to the Ebihara-san's. Well, that collection was stored in the local government, but there's no way to utilize it. So from the first time, there is some risk or there is some problem over there. Stored in the not good condition in the riverside, that is a problem. So there is a pre-disaster. There's a lots of risk and a problem, and after that it simply comes out. So that we have to resolve that kind of problem before the disasters. So in the future, so we have in other museums we have to learn about that. Think. Okay, time. 54分か. Okay, and there's one another short question or comments. Yes, please.
Has anything been damaged in Typhoon Shanshan?
In this case, well, in the last typhoon, there is a roll call for some cultural heritage damage on the typhoon, but I think at this time of the moment, I didn't heard about natural history collections. Yes, luckily.
As far as we know.
Well, that is limited to the information for the public-owned natural history collections. And sometimes we need to heard about the, we need to research about the private-owned collections. So maybe, okay. Right? Okay. Okay, let's go on to the next.
Okay, thank you.
The next one is, thank you, Ebihara-san. So next one is, yeah, Mei-Jung Su. Yeah, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mei-Jung from National Museum of Natural Science in Taiwan. And the topic of my presentation today is enhancing desired preparedness at the collections of the National Museum of Natural Science in Taiwan. I will share the experiences of 4 storage fire rescue drills in our museum. As we know, the main disaster that the museum most frequently encounter, including natural and man-made disasters. Natural disasters include fire, floods, earthquakes, and typhoons. Taiwan's geographical location makes it easy to get there, and so does Japan. Man-made disasters include theft and human negligence. We cannot prevent them from happening, but we can prevent them before, during, and after they occurred and reduce the risks. Fire is the main threat to most museums. A single spark can start a pear fire. Fire is not a natural disaster, but it can also be caused by man-made disasters. Among the different disasters, the Getty Institute showed that fire occurs most frequently. We should be alerted by the fire at the National Museum of Brazil that destroyed countless collections in 2018. Disasters are never forwarded. Let's start with an overview of our museum. Established in 1986, we are a very young National History Museum. The main building was completed in 4 phases. In addition, we have 3 affiliates related to earthquakes and birds. Our collection departments, including biology, geology, and anthropology, with a total of 11 divisions. Now, let's take a look at our collections. As of June 2024, we have more than 17 million collections, the largest number of which are insect specimens, followed by plant specimens. There are the long-term results of 37 researchers and technicians and volunteers related to the collection. We have 21 storages to store these specimens. Since the museum is built in phases, these collections are stored in different storages according to their types and scattered on different floors. Preparatory work for the fire drills includes establish a disaster rescue plan. All staff involved with the collection should know what the plan is. Secondly, correct the storage number and their locations. The third, share the rescue information such as personnel contact and the job agency in the crowd, and people are permitted to get this information from the crowd. Finally, develop the disaster procedure, including people, location, tools, route, and space. For reducing the damage caused by fire, we must first develop a disaster rescue guideline. Members of the emergency rescue team, procedures and messages for handling different disasters. Priorities for collection, rescue, and aftermath treatment. Once the data changes, it must be updated at any time. We determined the location of door number of each storage. The door numbers need to be compliant in the same direction so that the location of the storage can be quickly found in an emergency. This also helps to mark the order and the location of keys in the safe. Write a fire disaster relief script. The rescue drills scripts require brainstorming from different aspects. In particular, collection managers do not know when to extinguish fires and how to operate firefighting equipment. Disasters do not necessarily occur during the day, so nighttime security guards should also be involved. Now, let me explain our fire rescue drill with pictures. The one on the far left is the commander of the rescue team. He explained the theme before the drill. During the day, monitoring person discovered an alarm in the very early fire alarm system and immediately contacted the collection manager. Another monitoring staff informed the 911 and notified relevant personnel through the line. After confirming that people can enter the storage, the collection manager immediately goes to the storage to remove the important specimens. We place the important specimens together and mark them with clear stickers in advance, so that the collection can be rescued very quickly. We only contact fire equipment operation drills for initial extinguish fire because staff safety is the most important when disaster happened. During the drill, we found that something was blocking the rescue route. This is very dangerous, and you can see on the left picture, there is a path, but something was blocked, and the people cannot go through very quickly. We held a review meeting immediately after the drill. We once invited the firefighters to participate in our drill and give us very valuable suggestions. For example, the last person leaving the storage should close the door to prevent the fire from spreading. At the same time, the day and the night security guards also participated in the drills. Storage access control system in our museum includes keys and cards. As I mentioned before, we collect all storage keys in a place with 24 hours surveillance. We use stickers of different color in order to distinguish storage in different area. At the same time, place a master card on the left here. We use stickers of different cars in order to distinguish storage in a different area. And at the same time, place a master card which can enter every storage. The key box usually have sealed at the right side. And in case of emergency, you can tear it first and explain why the reason you have to tear it after rescue. In addition, the contact information of each collection manager and their job agency is placed on the box. During the drill, we discovered some problems. For example, due to changes in work, some security guards were not familiar with the location of the keys and the storage, and were not able to restore the fire alarm system. This picture on the left shows the second door being opened, and this storage is very complicated. There are 3 doors for this storage, and because it keeps a very expensive and very cherished collection. For example, after the key is opened, the card can be switched on the system next to it, and then the 3rd iron door can be opened. Besides this, don't forget that you may not be able to find the light switch due to smoke during a fire. And the last is, in order to make up for the fact that the monitoring guards were not familiar with the location of the storage and how to open the door, they were required to walk through each storage and practice to open the doors. In conclusion, disaster drawers in museums are very important. In particular, the collections in the storages are important evidence of biological evolution and human historical development, and cannot be ignored. Storage disasters required familiarity with rescue procedures to reduce risk and damage, and the drawers are very important to collection safety. And thank you for listening my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks for your talk. And any comments or questions? Yeah, I have. Oh, yes, please. Yeah, in the voice.
Is there any fire extinguishing system in your storage?
No?
No.
No.
Wow, it's so
Then even in 1989, we have a very big earthquake in Taiwan, and there is no specimens was damaged at that time. So we have to enhance the fire to practice how to to save the collection safe. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm the course of this topic. The question is, do we have a fire extinguisher in the
Yes.
collection? Yes, we have.
So sorry.
We have the fire
Extinguished.
Yeah, the problem is because most of the collection we have dry specimen, but we have a water. We only have a water one. So before the water one, we have very early smoke detection apparatus. So that means if any kind of smoke occur, then we will have about 15 minutes to do the first stage of the fire extinction. So that means we can prevent the loss if we we trigger the extinguishing of from the water, then we can just save we have more time to save the specimens in the collection. I mean, in a very early stage, yeah. But we are trying to replace not used water, but the other gas, for example, the carbon dioxide. Yeah. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments? Yes, I have one question.
Yes, please.
In the fire drill, you removed the real specimens or just a case?
We remove the real specimen when we are practicing.
I'm afraid that some damage to the specimens or need shaking or something like that. Is that okay?
We are doing some practice, but that's the responsibility of the collection manager. So we'll have subdivide different goals to just, some of them are just taking care very carefully the specimens when I really do some evacuations from the collection. But yeah, so the specimens we define which should be go out and which just forget them. I mean, the most important is the type specimens and the very rare specimens. So we usually just deposit such kind of specimens very in front of the door.
Yes.
So after you open the door and somebody just focus on the fire, the first stage of fire, and the other group they just take the type specimen out, then close the door.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great job. Any others? Right? Okay. Short comment? No? Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
So next one is Yuanhao Zhang. Is that okay? More pronunciation, I'm not sure about that. So please prepare. Ready?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I feel myself shaking a lot because it's so cold sitting over there on the floor and a bit nervous. Well, I'm excited to discuss this topic, which is enhancing the networking and linking the communities for the conservation practice of natural history collections. Well, I'm going to tell the story of the disaster and the museum from a humanity and museum study perspective. First, I want to thank Ms. Suzuki and Ebihara for introducing the disaster situation in the two cities and the collection rescue activity. And I assume Mr. Sakuma and Ôhara will elaborate further on this topic. So I'm just going to skip the disaster specifics and focus on the issue related to the lack of the organization laws and policies for natural history collections and how curators can address this. Well, what is the problem? One of the main causes or issue underlying the loss and delayed rescue efforts is that lack of law and policy that can trigger a timely national and public attention and action on the natural history collection, especially in the extreme situation. In Japan, the natural history collection are barely covered by the major museum and heritage-related laws and policies. Even when they are, well, maybe the focus tends to be on the human activity and the humanity value behind the collection rather than the scientific or the biological value of them. And well, of course, laws and policies are crucial for example, the registration, the preservation management, and the financial assistance, and the government involvement, such as the national collection, rescue action, something like that, and the public awareness. So for this, so what is the root cause for the lack of this kind of laws and policies? I've been researching the history of natural history collections and the history of natural history in Japan. And I hypothesize that there's a long-term and long-standing bias in how government and public, how they perceive, how they image the museum collections. And this bias is, well, obviously reflected in the lack of laws and policies and the storage and the shortage of people in the science with expertise in science and natural history within the government agency. And, okay, sorry. Oh, I should have this. So I'm going to talk about the root causes of this from a history perspective. Well, the evidence can be seen in the development of the history of the museum in Japan, which I'm going to elaborate more in the following steps. Well, the concept of the natural in Japan is something really interesting but complex. Before and after the Meiji era, when the Western natural science and philosophy influenced the Japanese perception and concept of nature, and traditionally, Japanese viewed the nature as the interconnected with human life, and human is the part of nature itself. So it could be really difficult to distinguish between the natural parts and the artificial parts of an object. Well, additionally, the natural beauty, the sense of natural beauty and the value of beauty is so deep rooted in the Japanese art. So, and when museum was first established during the Japan's time of modernization, the motivation behind the collecting were different from what we're doing today. So this historical altitude may have some influence on that. And okay. So, okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Yeah, so, oh, sorry. Well, in Japan, there is a historically more emphasis on the cultural properties, the cultural things, where the nationalism was shaped and by preserving and promoting the cultural assets and linking the Japanese art with the Japanese identities. Museum and somehow were seen as a platform or tool for the national policies, such as the industrial promotion and the resource protection during the wartime, and for the educational purpose. So with this reason, collections were often viewed as tools or method rather than the heritage or the properties or some scientific research resource. For example, like a potato collection might be used to teach how to grow them or how to produce them in an agriculture perspective, rather than to tell people how it is important to the biodiversity. So it's more about production or the industrial purpose. And natural history museum in Japan developed in a time of post-war, when the economy grows rapidly. And with this background, the purpose of collecting could be ambiguous, and the management experienced a unsustainable problem and inadequate financial support. Yes, because it was built during the economic growth time, but currently they don't have enough financial support. So it all contributes to the challenge that collections are facing today. And well, let's have a little bit look at the current law and the policy situation. At the national level, the Cultural Properties Protection System and the Act on the Cultural Property Preservation barely cover the natural history collections. And on the regional level, where you can see in many prefectures in Japan, they have some sort of cultural property preservation plans and divisions, but they rarely emphasize something related to the natural history collection. Even at some of the museum level, their operational rule can be really unfair for the collection. For example, if you want to exchange or lend some collection to the other institution, you may have to go through the process that you go through in the way you do with the cultural properties. So it could be a problem when you want to do something and the administrative staff may lack the scientific expertise to manage this process effectively, and it also could be really hard for them too. And so what can be done at this stage if the lawmaking and policymaking challenge are a long-term goals? Museum can take Museum can take in some step by raising awareness, not just between inside the community, but to the public and to the government, and bringing the importance of conserving the natural history collection into public discourse is really crucial. And linking community and try to enhancing the collaboration should be the next step. But, well, there are some actions in progress, such as like cross-museum collaboration and skills sharing project organized by some network in Japan. How to enhance them when the community in Japan is kind of close and small. I did interview research with 3 major natural history museums in Japan, and I identified several common concerns related to the conservation science, related to the laws and policies. Well, for example, the current workload and scientific work may be mismatched with the employment condition, and the difficulty to ensure that they have money, they have found as an individual to do some research like that, and the lack of sustainable support, because that museum was developed during a economic growth period of time, and ununiform action and views on the collection. And finally, the museum, especially for those museums without science, natural curators, maybe struggle the most. I'll show you some data of the curators in Japan by 2020. So there were 228 museums in Japan that collect or exhibited the biological specimen, but only 112 of them had natural science curators. So, well, on average, the Natural History Museum had more curators. That could be 2.5 or something. Well, general museum maybe have more, but in some regional museum and history museum, there could be no or just one curators over there. And additionally, the curators often have to manage collection outside their expertise, such as an entomologist overseeing the botanical specimens in some cases. And also in some, well, this chart is in the number of curators specialized in the biological specimen in different prefecture. And you can see there's only 1 or 2 of them in the region. And this makes it even harder to find the curators when you encounter the problems, and it's hard to find one who can help and who can talk to within the region. So, well, for the discussion, it's not a conclusion yet, but it is possible to say that starting with some joint research project on conservation science or the other research and discussion about the meaning and the value of collection could be beneficial. As I've stated, the value and meaning of the collection are not well known by the public and government. And curators could not just gain research funding by this kind of joint research, but also solving the problem of their museum, and kind of they are linked by a shared research aim. And collaboration could help to make better decision based on the scientifically proven method and provides solid reference, especially for those museums without natural science curators. And in parallel, the defining, redefining, and try to build a standard for the value of the collection is essential for addressing the disparity and the ambiguity in the law and policy in Japan. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And what he mentioned about the Japanese situation, and I want to know the situation in other countries. So please comment in the wide range of view. Any comments and questions? No? Well, this presentation is related to my presentation and the Ôhara-san's presentation. So let's make a joint comment on discussion in the very last part. Okay? Okay. So thank you, Yuan-san. And the next one is me.
Yes, next presenter is Daisuke Sakuma.
Yes.
He also for the organizer of this symposium. Yes, please, Sakuma-san.
Okay. And I want to talk about the pre- and post-disaster response in Japan. Yes, the September 1st is a Memorial Day for the Great Kanto earthquake in 1923. So that day is a national day for the disaster management in Japan. And natural disasters occurs when we least expect them. That is the words of Trahiko Terada. Usually many disasters occurs when we forget, but in these days, the many large disaster happens to next. So 2011, Great East Japan earthquake that was talked by Suzuki-san, and 2016, also there is a big earthquake in Kumamoto, and some of the museums are damaged in that time. And 2020, Hitoyoshi flooding, that was talked by Ebihara-san. And in the very beginning of this year, there was a big earthquake in Noto Peninsula. Well, luckily, no natural history museums are severely damaged, but one aquarium was damaged. So the Yuanhao-san mentioned about the museums and cultural properties legal system in Japan. And Museum Act was based on the Social Education Act, and that belongs to a basic act of education. And there is another law line, Cultural Properties Protection Act. So local history and art museums are controlled by these two laws. But in case of natural history things are covered by a Museum Act, so the collections are protected by the Museum Act, but not in the case of Cultural Properties Protection Act. Well, especially outside the museum, privately owned cultural properties are sometimes covered by Cultural Property Protection Act, but privately owned natural history collections are not covered by this act, and nor the Museum Act. So the situation is very severe in the case of natural history things. So there is a gap in the legal system. So for the disaster response, to fill these gaps, the Cultural Heritage Disaster Risk Management Center was built and jointly act with many NGOs and many museums. They are doing works at now. So I will tell you in the timeline. So as Suzuki-san mentioned, in the case of 2011, Committee for Salvaging Cultural Properties react about the disasters. So that was started from based on the Cultural Properties Protection Act. so that rescue and salvaging for the natural history things are delayed, and we have no system at that time. So the natural history collection salvaging were done by National Museum of Nature and Science and voluntary activities of many museums, including Western Japan Natural History Museum networks. So there was a voluntary system. And that committee was reformed as a cultural disaster risk management work promotion council. Too long name. And that council was covered with the National Science Museum and Japanese Committee for Science Museums are members, and Western Japan Natural History Museum Network and the Japanese Council of University Museums was joined as a former member in the council, so that the natural history members were increased in the committee. And in the 2020, Cultural Disaster Risk Management Center was established, and the council developed a guideline. So in that guideline, natural history collections are clearly defined as their conservation targets, so that the situation has much improved at that time. But we have a lot to do. This center was settled as a permanent institution and a cultural heritage organization, but with very limited number of staffs and no natural history professionals. So we need a national center for conservation. The center is a kind of coordination headquarters or advisory body rather than task force. So it's completely different from the United States FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, where they have a strong power or they have a quick response about time. But in case of our country, primary action and the actual forces in salvage and conservation is owed to local governments and voluntary professional groups. Well, the voluntary is still alive. So that we have a lot to do. I want to make a current challenge in the 4 lines. Number 1 is the preparation for initial activities. As Suzuki-san or Ebihara-san mentioned, we need a lot of stocking materials, a bunch of card boxes, thousands of zipper bags, etc., etc. Sometimes we need oxygen absorber or ethanol plastic globes, something like that. We need a storage for that. And at the same time, we need a temporary stockyard. As you see, lots of damaged samples are full of mud and dust. So we cannot get into our stock room, our storage room. So we need a work yard. And number 3 is a refrigerator. What we learned from the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, we need lots of refrigerator to keep wet specimens for a while. We cannot treat the 10,000 specimens at a time before it damaged. So we need to once put them into the refrigerator, and after that we treat them with them. And the spring box teams and their expenses. Staff and money is the most important things in all ways. And number 2 is a little bit different. And the shortage of storage room in museums. Maybe it is true for all the museums in the worldwide. But shortage of storage room, sometimes causes stored in the poor condition, like Kanjiro's collections. And that is a reason for severe damage. And shortage of storage rooms are difficult to sort, organize some collections, and the delay of inventory or digitizations. And after that situation, if disaster happens, hard to recover information. Well, that is a very problem. And the number 3 line is a foster understandings by the range of people to general public and the local governments officials, and Yuanhao-san just mentioned, and cultural heritage creators In Japan, then more than 90% of the historic or the art museums, well, natural history is a very minor part of the museums. So we have to teach historic people or the art people how to treat with the natural history collections in usual and in disasters. And we have to tell them the importance and responsibility of the local governments. Yeah. Well, sometimes local governments people say, well, there's no natural history collections in the collection property law, so it can be dismissed. And number 4 is another point of view, accompaniment support for restoration process. Once museum is damaged, museums takes, well, the stabilization process needs very long time. At the same time, restoration of the museum itself takes much longer time. But that is a case of Rikuzen Takata City Museum that was reopened 2 years ago, and well, as Suzuki-san mentioned, and they exhibit many samples, and more than 80% exhibited specimen was recovered one. And the museum itself tells a story about risk of tsunami. Okay. And during this process, we support the museum's specimen stabilization. At the same time, we did some museum workshop for children to make our interest for the museums. So that without that, museums are not recovered. Okay, conclusion. Well, so disaster preparedness has been improved in Japanese museums since, if you compare to 2011, now it includes natural history specimens. But we still need to improve them, especially need to have a national center for natural history conservation. For general understanding for natural history conservation from general public, government officers, and heritage professionals are needed. We need to develop the system to support damaged museums in long term. Okay, that's my talk. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sakuma-san, for any question or comment?
In Switzerland, for example, there's a company which is specialized in this emergency response. So I've visited the company. They have their own freezing and dry freezing facilities. Their staff is trained, and across Europe you can call them, and within 24 hours they are on the site helping with the disaster management. You have something like that in Japan?
No.
We don't have that in Austria. So I think it's not every country is maybe professional enough, big enough. Of course, it's an expensive company, but of course they are fast in their response. So you save a lot of time, and you can save a lot of objects and material. So they work a lot for flooding incidences, and so archives and libraries and so on, which are damaged. But I think it's an idea to keep in mind. You can do a lot by yourself, but if you have support, professional support from a company, that might be an additional help in situation of a crisis. And Japan is big enough, you will have this happening again and again. And it is maybe harder to train everyone across the country, or to have a support team or company, or however it's working. In Germany, they are, for example, developing in every German region, they have like an emergency support vehicle, which can go to the site. They have cleaning facilities inside of those vehicles for dirty, damaged archive material. So there are some things which are happening at the moment in Europe, and maybe there are some ideas for you to learn.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sounds like a Thunderbird. And well, for historic samples or the historic documents, there's a team of the academists. Well, that is NGOs. They have a very quick response in the time of emergency, but they are doing it bluntly. So your system is so sophisticated, and we have a lot to do. Yes. Yes, please.
I was wondering, since there is such a high risk of earthquake, if it's standard practice to do earthquake mounts for displays here?
Well, disaster, it is, since 1923 until 1995, there was a big earthquake in Kansai, Hanshin district. And at that time, the museum was damaged severely, but there is some small damage for the museum occurred in the meanwhile, but big disaster like Tohoku tsunami, Great East earthquake, was never happened before, so that the system was not developed. And after that, we said we should prepare for the next one, because the next one would be the Kansai area, including Osaka, would be damaged at that time. So I want to say that we need a response system. But before that, we have several damaged disasters happened. So now we are developing.
It's okay? Yeah, thank you very much, Sakuma-san, for the... So let's move to the next presentation, Masahiro Ôhara and Daisuke Sakuma. So, hello everybody. And I'm Masahiro Ôhara, is one of the organizers, and Sakuma-san also now talking for the... Yeah, this is our title, Pre- and Post-Disaster Management of the Natural History Collection and the Role of the Museums. So already mentioned to the Sakuma-san is said is a natural disaster occur when we least expect them. In Japanese, 災害は忘れた頃にやってくる. So it's a disaster come when we forget them completely. Yeah, and we will talk to you about you should be before and after disaster. I hope that our talk will serve as a summary of the symposium. Okay. So this is just for the normal work of the museum, and the museum has a collection and data as usually we extract from the, for example, natural histories are just for the taking from the local biodiversities. And for a chronologically change to the, maybe for this a good idea for the each 10 years for the monitoring and collecting for the collection, it's maybe because the collection is getting better. And for the museum want to be the keep to the nice condition. And also if you have money, so taking digital data and for the nice database. So this is a normal work of the museums. So this flowchart shows of the ideal task of the normal museum should be doing. And it is important not to neglect these commonplace tasks before the disaster strikes. So this is very important for preparing for the museum collection for the, if happen to the strike for the disaster. So, you know, for the Suzuki-san already talked to for the Tohoku area, very big earthquake, not only big earthquake, but also it's terrible for the tsunami. And the tsunami is so damaged for the, you see for the, about the tsunami is one place is 43 meters. It's impossible to do for the, and this is so museum over there, and we have a serious damage So already for the Suzuki-san show. And also Rikuzen Takada Museum is one of this, so that very damaged for the one. And also for the self-guard and helped to for the reconstructed for the museum collection. And this is I'm for the entomologist. I'm for the one of the Lucani beetles completely damaged in the boxes. So it's a biodiversity collection seriously damaged, and we want to know how much damaged. So this is important for the database and images, and we want to go to the recovered is a rescue. And so we have experience, and we know for the very important human network, internet database backup, and local community museums and local authorities, but we need for such relations. Okay, so damaged museums materials need to restored so that they can be utilized. Human network are important in this process, and also which materials were lost and which remained. And the information maybe it's good to deposit in the cloud. So such what condition was like before the damage is needed. So networks between the museums and the cooperation with the local authorities or administration were also important already for the Zhang-san and the Sakuma-san mentioned. So this photo was taken when I was in charge of the restoring the damaged insect and the beetle specimen at the Hokkaido University Museum. So graduate student and volunteers helped for this process. Yeah, we are now washing a rinse of the damaged specimen, and the two graduate students he's a specialist of the beetles and reconstructed. So about 5 millimeters beetles and reconstruct of the board papers. And so many volunteer and graduate student helped worked. And almost for the final, and so finally for the 1,001 specimen, and totally and 60 person is a participant, and the average of the 6.6 person per days. Anyway, for the very quickly because the insect is quickly damaged, and we are rescue for all the specimen. Yeah, again for the. So I hope you're understanding that these things, I mentioned earlier, this is a very important human network for the database backup and the local community, the museum, and the local authorities. So following this experience, for the following suggestions have been made to reduce the damage and carry out the efficient restoration. So there are to keep up with the risk and assessment and their countermeasures and to develop the human resource. Yeah, anyway, so volunteer and graduate student helped us, but we need such people and for the daily for the working for the such training. Okay, let's move to the next topic. And we just now talking for the collection, but also for the many local museum has for the local area. So environment or biodiversity of the own to the local place, local area. The important aspect of this flowchart, which can be further summarized simply, is a museum based on natural history information can be useful in the restoring nature in the affected area. And even after a restoration, museum natural history information can be useful in assessing it. Yeah, this is my for the study beetle is the littoral beetles, and collecting for the seaweed pile on the beach. And this is for the Hydrophilidae as the genus Kelkion. In Japan, it's 6 species. And so we conducted for the research is 2009 and 2010 before the tsunami. And 2011 happened to the tsunami, and we worried to what happened to the insect. Yes, and anyway, we research continued 2011 and 2013. So this is a photo, is Rikuzentaka, the beach, it's 2010, very nice pine for the forest, but it's after tsunami, such stations completely destroy the beach. The pines are never only one tree is stand, no more. And then another place is Mayebara beach, it's a Kamaishi city, very nice, beautiful for the beach, but there is gone, and no more. And this place is, you see for the stone, and 2 meters down of the beach area is completely beach is gone. So we are researched for 11 localities and the beetles before tsunami and after tsunami we checking, and very shortly said is so some places no change for the population, but some places are down and some places down and up. So it's anyway, we have information of the museum collection and for the sampling of the field work, and we can compare these for the environment, how to change. So museum information is very important to such work. Anyway, we want to recover for the field area. Also, we need to such national so museums for the data. Okay, so very simple talk to anyway for the collection, keeping preparing for the data. Also, not only for the collection, but also the area on your museums. So this is summary for the assessing possibility disaster, performing physical work for the disaster prevention, making a list of the specimen of the collection, and the imaging specimen, obtain the 3D. It's very nice for the 3D, but it depends on your budget. Anyway, and after for the survey and the reported disaster, and the repair and restore the collection. So anyway, so we need for the information 3, 4, 5 before disasters. And the local community biodiversity, before the survey of the natural history of the area, predicted monitoring to determine and current status of the natural history of the local area. So after it's a survey of the reported damage to the natural history of the area, planning for the restoring the natural history environment of the area. So monitoring and the restoration of the natural history of the area. That's all. Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for Ôhara-san. Any comments or questions? Yes, please.
I have just a small one. I was wondering, when you went again in 11 sample sites to check how the population was, if the specimens were still there, did you, I mean, I saw some were stable, some went up, some down. Did you see whether some disappeared entirely, locally maybe?
Yeah, some places for the disappeared beach.
Oh, okay.
And completely nothing for the beetles. Yeah, but it's we checking for about 10 years ago, and now it's a Sendai area, it's several area getting back. So because the littoral beetle is very, very tough of such natural disasters, so they survived for a long. And anyway, for the mono environment system is not so good. You need for the more hetero situation that is survived for the insect.
Thank you. Any others? Not only for Ôhara-san's presentation, but all of the symposium, if you have comments or the questions, please. Yes, please.
Oh, yeah, there's been a lot of talks about disasters in Japan, especially, and you have several times mentioned that a lot of regional or remote museums are helping each other. How is that working? Is everybody ready to step in? Is there funding issues? How does it work? Can you explain?
Well, to work in the collaborate in the network, that is based on the human relations. But, well, if the museum's curators or the museum's collection managers belongs to some professional society, well, they should know each other. But in case of there is no professional on the museums, maybe they cannot know each other. So the professionalism of each collection managers or the curators are very important, I think, even in the local museums. And funding is a very problem. Well, most of the salvage work is some of the small jobs that they can do it in the desks or by personal or with a volunteer. But so that the cost would be needed in that case, but the vast funding is needed to move the specimens from the place to another place or the rental refrigerators. Such kind of things need much more the funds. Well, luckily in this case, the refrigerator covered by each museums or some of the private funding for the rescue work. Luckily we obtained like that, but we want to keep a fundamental work funding. So that's the long way to go. 誰か他の日本人で今の方のことをコメントされる方いますか？難しいかな。Well, and any Japanese comment? No? Yes, please.
I think you mentioned the need to get other conservators trained in dealing with natural science collections. Do you have trained conservators who specialize in natural science in Japan?
You mean the professional, conservators for the natural history things? Well, in Japanese museums, there's a very little number of the conservators, not only natural history, but also in the historical or artistic things. So the most of the conservators trained as cultural properties professionals. So they are feeling, sometimes they are feeling, we have no knowledge about natural history things. But yesterday in the preliminary talk, Tom's mentioned about, many things are in common in cultural properties and natural history things, especially in the wet specimens. There's a lot of mold on that, and how to protect or how to remove or how to treat with them. Well, that's kind of things are very in common. So we need to collaborate with historic people in that sense. And we have to include the conservators for the natural history fields.
I'm a natural science conservator in Australia, and I find it's very hard to encourage the art, decorative conservators into the natural science field. I've kind of been trying to do that for 15 years in Australia, and have my soapbox moments. But we are trying to develop training courses specifically for that. My colleague here and I are writing a course aimed at bringing decorative art conservators to get over their squeamishness and join us.
Yeah, yeah, that's very important. Well, before these kind of things, the Tobunken and the Nabuken, that is the center of the property protections for the cultural things. We don't have very small relation with them. But after that, the center was established, we have some interaction with them. So it can be developed, I hope. Yes, please.
Our approach has been to do quite detailed planning, and that starts at the very top of the organisation around business continuity and crisis management, coming right down to the sort of collections level where we do have disaster plans. Each store has a disaster bins and spill stations and so forth, and we have centralised supplies that if it's a more major disaster we can get materials out, and in the disaster plan we map some of those specialist people that we might need to bring in, whether that's freezers or specialist conservators to work on different aspects. But the detailed planning is essential.
Yes. Yes. So that I admire with Taiwan's situation. That is a very detailed drill was made, and we have to do it in our own museum. Okay, any others? Okay, almost in time. So, disasters happens everywhere on Earth. Well, a fire can be occurred everywhere, and some of the country has a risk of earthquake or tsunami, and some place can be occurred some war situation. That is a very worst situation. But we have to cooperate. Well, maybe it is very difficult in the hard time, but we can do some knowledge exchange or experience exchange. So we want to keep in touch for the future. Anyway, thanks a lot for coming to this symposium. ありがとうございました。